Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at why pros are spamming Soraka in the AD carry role for patch 10.2. So we're going to be discussing why this works, how you're supposed to play it, and the setup that you should be running on the champion. So if we start things off here by taking a look at why this works so well right now, number one is that traditional supports generally do have a stronger laning phase, stronger early game than most traditional AD carries. So why not just throw two supports down in the bot lane, have Soraka as your AD carry or just your carry down in the bot lane, and have another support there as well, and just give yourself a super strong laning phase. Most traditional AD carries can't actually out trade Soraka in the laning phase or out trade most supports in the game. So if you throw two supports down in the bot lane there, you just give yourself an insanely good early game. Now, Soraka's Q surprisingly does have a pretty low mana cost. It deals a ton of damage, and it's also on a very short cooldown. So if you're just spamming that thing out in the laning phase whenever the enemy AD carry is looking to go for CS, and you got a support as well just spamming out poke abilities, imagine like playing Soraka Senna down in the bot lane. You just poke with your Q on Soraka, you poke with the Q on Senna, and it's just so difficult for the enemy to really even look to trade against you or do anything against you in the laning phase. Having two supports in one game also allows you to really easily play around a win condition of just buffing up the fed member on your team. So whether it be your mid, your jungle, or your top, you just want to be playing around them in team fights. So if you can do that, if you can just be giving them like a ton of Soraka heals, Senna heals, like you just have two supports on your team. So it just allows you to keep your teammates alive for a super long time in fights, and it just makes your team fights really strong. Because she's a very simple champion to execute as well, it doesn't take you very long to learn Soraka. She's a pick that you can pretty much pick up right away, start having good success with, so you don't really need to rely on any sort of advanced mechanics to do well with Soraka. If you can just be healing your team in fights, if you can just press R at the correct time, then oftentimes that's just going to be enough to straight up win your team games. With the way the league is nowadays, with so many different champions having gap closers, so many different champions having the ability to just dive right on top of you and burst you out without you really even being able to react, it can be really frustrating playing AD carry. Like sometimes even if you're 6-0, if you're super far ahead in the early game, if the enemy team just has a fed assassin, you're gonna be able to do nothing in team fights, or it's very difficult for you to do anything. So why play a traditional AD carry like that when you can just play Soraka, and even if you're getting one shot in fights, even if you're not really able to do too much, at least you can still press your R and be somewhat useful for your team. Soraka does scale pretty nicely with items as well. She's really good with Athenes. You just provide your team with a lot of extra healing once you do pick that item up. Redemption's also really good on Soraka. So by going for CS in the laning phase, by getting to your items faster, it does give you a much quicker spike. And when you're fighting around those like early dragons, when you're fighting for objectives, like the extra healing from your ultimate and just your normal heals from your W is really noticeable if you are playing this carry Soraka. Now, for how you should be looking to play the pick, you pretty much want to play it exactly how you play the Soraka support pick, except you do want to be going for CS. So you do want to be taking farm, you do want to be getting your items quicker when you are playing Soraka in the carry role. But in the laning phase, you pretty much just want to be looking to poke with your Q whenever the enemy AD carry is looking to go for CS. That's like your bread and butter trading pattern on Soraka. That's when you should be looking to trade with the champion in the laning phase. If you can just do that consistently, if you can hit your Q when the enemy is like in their auto animation to take CS, then you're just going to be able to get a ton of poke off in the laning phase. Now, don't forget to weave in autos as well in the laning phase when you are poking with Q, so you can look to use your Q, throw in an auto after that as well. And if you're only using Q in the laning phase, if you're not throwing in autos, then you're going to be losing out on a lot of damage throughout the entirety of the laning phase. So just make sure you do remember to weave in those autos, especially like you're running Airy on the Soraka, so your autos in the laning phase, at least early on, can actually do a decent amount of damage, and it will add up throughout the laning phase. Once the laning phase is over, you pretty much just want to be playing around your team. So you're basically like a support playing in the AD carry role. So you're not going to be able to just like solo carry games on Soraka. Like you're going to have to rely on your team a little bit. You're going to have to play around your team. So just be grouping for objectives, be playing around the fed carry on your team. Just be looking to sit beside them in every single team fight. That's going to be your main objective when you are playing Soraka in the mid to late game. Just don't let your fed carry get away from you. Sit beside them and just provide them with a ton of utility in those fights. And then for a couple really good synergies that you can look to play with Soraka down in the bot lane, I think Nami is a great one. Pair Nami up with Soraka and you have insane sustain in the laning phase. You got a ton of healing coming out of both those champions. You also can play off of each other really well. So if Soraka hits a Q, gets the slow off, it's much easier for Nami to line up her Q, get the knock up, and then when Nami hits her Q, Soraka follows up with a silence and they're just CC'd for a very long duration. I do think Senna is probably the best champion you can pair up with Soraka right now, just because you have so much utility with both these two champions. You got a ton of poke in the laning phase as well. If Senna lines up a Q with the Glacial Augment, very easy for Soraka to hit a Q after that for a ton of poke damage. Once you hit level 6, Soraka ultimate with Senna ultimate, just like so much utility. You got the healing from Soraka, you got the shield coming out of Senna, so it's very difficult for the enemy to look to beat you in a 2v2 at level 6 with this combo. Sona can also be really good, very similar to why Nami is strong, just so much sustain in the laning phase with this combination. It's going to be very difficult for the enemy to look to poke you out at all. You're just going to be able to take really aggressive trades, and even if you go even on the trade, you're going to be able to heal up a lot faster than the enemy is going to be able to, so you can just take those even trades in the laning phase, and they're actually one trades because of your healing. And then Swain is a really interesting one because you can play off of the Swain root in the laning phase with his E there. If he hits his E, you can follow up with the Soraka silence, and then it just pretty much guarantees that the enemy has nowhere to go. Like if you hit the Swain E, they're just gonna die right away, especially like once you have the level 6 there. Swain E into the Soraka E, they're silenced, they can't flash away, so it just allows you to lock somebody down, and it allows you to pretty much get guaranteed free kills throughout the laning phase. So if we move on to the setup you should be running on your Soraka in the carry role, for your Keystone Rune, look to be taking Aerie in most of your games. If you are in a more difficult matchup, if you think you're going to get like bursted out and all in really easily in the laning phase, you can look to take the Guardian. So if you're up against something, I don't know, like a Misfortune Leona bot lane, and they have the potential to just burst you out really easily in the laning phase, then you can look to take the Guardian to give yourself a little bit more sustain, give yourself a little bit more durability. I would be looking to take the Aerie though in most matchups. It just does synergize really well with Soraka, and it does add to your poke damage in the laning phase. And then for the rest of your runes there, Mana Flow Ban, very standard. Transcendence, very key on Soraka. You want to be hitting 40% CDR as soon as possible. The faster you can hit 40% CDR on Soraka, the stronger you're going to be in those mid-game team fights there. And because you will be getting a lot of CS in the laning phase, or because you will be getting all the CS in the laning phase, you're going to hit that 40% spike like even faster than support Soraka. So it just allows you to have a really good impact very early on in the game. For secondary runes there, it's going to be Revitalize every single game, and then swap Second Wind or Bone Plating depending on your matchup. So if you're going up against a ranged matchup and you're going to be poked a lot, take the Second Wind. If you're going up against an all-in bot lane, say they're playing a Leona, a Nautilus, a Thresh, look to take the Bone Plating. And then for your core build here, it's going to be Athenes into CDR boots and redemption pretty much every single game. That's what most pros are doing in this patch. Nobody's really going away from this setup, this core setup on Soraka. So it just allows you to have a really nice mid-game spike there. You hit the 40% CDR with this build and by taking Transcendence. So it just allows for you to have a ton of impact in those mid-game fights. And then for your situational items on the champion, go for an Ardent Sensor if your team is pretty auto attack reliant. So if you got a lot of champions that are going to benefit from the bonus damage on hit there and the bonus attack speed, then pick up an Ardent Sensor as your third item. Shurelius is really nice as a third item as well. If the enemy team does have a lot of dive champions, then going for Shurelius is a great option. It just allows for you to peel really well in team fights. Warmogs there is a great item option later on in the game too. Just allows you to be a little bit tankier, allows you to always be pretty much full on HP, so you can always be healing your team in those fights. Spirit Visage is great for Soraka if the enemy team does have a lot of heavy AP damage. So if they got an AP mid, AP top, AP jungle, look to go for a Spirit Visage as your third item. And then pretty much the opposite for Zhonya's there. If they're very AD heavy, if they have a lot of dive champions, then you can go Zhonya's, and you can do a great job at just staying alive and not allowing those dive champions to burst you out. And then for your ability maxing on Soraka, I know that most support Soraka players do tend to max their W out first, or they tend to put like a couple points into Q and then max their W out first. So you can do that on this carry Soraka. You can put like 3 points into Q and then max your W. But what most pros are doing in this patch is they're just straight up maxing their Q. So they're putting 5 points into Q, maxing W second, and then maxing E last. Alright, so that is going to be all for the video, guys. Hopefully this now gives you a very good idea as to why Soraka is being played down in the carry role for this patch right now, why a ton of pros are spamming her, and as to why we're probably going to see her picked up a little bit in the pro scene in the coming weeks. So with that being said, guys, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.